While the Prime Minister's been busy schmoozing and talking trade overseas, back home his Finance Minister's been reeling in any hope Labor will tax the rich.
Obviously you've heard that Chris Hipkins, as the Labor leader, has ruled out a wealth tax and a capital gains tax.
Chris Hipkins has earned a reputation as a steady hand in uncertain times. However, his track record reveals a consistent alignment with soft neoliberal policies and a tendency to lean toward the interests of his former connections in the oil industry when tough choices arise. Hipkins often tries to justify his reluctance to implement a wealth tax by raising fears of wealth flight, suggesting that if New Zealand is one of the few countries to adopt such a policy, the wealthy will simply leave.
What is the downside to a wealth tax?
Well, one of the challenges if New Zealand's one of the only countries in the world doing it, then you run the risk of wealth flight. So people will literally take their money and put it somewhere where they're not going to pay a wealth tax.
Yet this argument doesn't hold up under scrutiny. Numerous countries, including Norway, Switzerland and the Netherlands, have long-standing wealth taxes, and these are nations celebrated for their robust social supports and equitable societies. If these countries face some degree of wealth flight, it raises an important question. Isn't wealth flight, in this context, an indicator that the policy works? A wealth tax ensures resources are redistributed to benefit society as a whole, rather than concentrating value in the hands of the wealthy. If the wealthy choose to leave because they no longer benefit disproportionately, that only underscores the policy's success, unless, of course, your priority is to maintain a soft neoliberal system that still privileges the few over the many. Under Chris Hipkins' leadership, we've witnessed what can only be described as a policy purge. A series of once-promised government projects, spanning climate action, human rights, health, and employment rights, have been either scrapped or stalled. Hipkins claimed this purge would save about $1 billion, which he intended to reallocate to cyclone recovery and cost of living measures. While such savings were important, the cuts targeted initiatives that were designed to address systemic issues. Hipkins's political decisions cannot be viewed in isolation. They reflect a broader history of exposure to corporate influence and industry priorities. Before entering politics, Hipkins worked as a training manager for Todd Energy and Gas Petrochemical Enterprises Limited, now Learning Energy. Todd Energy, part of the Todd Corporation. The Todd Corporation is a member of the NZ Initiative, a think tank descended from the Pro-Deregulation Business Roundtable, and both are aligned with the Atlas Network that promotes deregulation and market-first policies. This alignment reflects a consistent effort to undermine environmental protections in favour of deregulated markets. For example, in the 2000s, Todd Energy worked alongside the Business Roundtable to advocate for a carbon tax over an emissions trading scheme. While framed as a simpler solution, this alternative supported Todd Energy and the Business Roundtable's interests by avoiding stricter compliance mechanisms and enabling deregulation. Furthermore, Todd Energy has shown a keen interest in foreshore and seabed resources, questioning mouldy claims to natural resources under the treaty. The company had framed these claims as a threat to their ability to explore and extract petroleum in the national interest. This history underscores a prioritisation of corporate profit over Indigenous sovereignty and environmental responsibility. It should also be noted that Chris Hipkins was also an advisor to Helen Clark. Her Labour government ushered in legislation which gave ownership of the foreshore and seabed to the Crown, and stripped of the rights of Māori to seek customary title through the courts. The Māori Party, recognising these conflicts, rejected donations from Todd Corporation, refusing to be associated with its exploitative practices. Hipkins' decision to cut fuel taxes and half-price public transport fares in 2023, while avoiding more sustainable options like a wealth tax or capital gains tax, echoes this bias.
We'll reduce the average 60-litre tank of petrol by $17.25.
In a city so devastated by climate change, Hipkins had to tread the line between subsidising fossil fuels and keeping costs down.
It's an extremely dumb economic policy.
Infometrics has crunched the numbers on the average fuel use of people in different income bands. Because higher income households use more fuel, they'll save about $64 a month. But those who earn the least and use the least petrol save just $21.
We've heard time and time again about tax cuts for the rich. This policy is exactly that.
The policy also a gear shift for Grant Robertson, who, after extending it a fourth time in December, said, nope, no way, we're not going to be extending it again.
It is not sustainable to continue to subsidise the cost of petrol indefinitely for everyone.
Why are you coming back to this?
Because we've got a new Prime Minister.
These measures encourage fossil fuel consumption and sidestep addressing the systemic inequalities in New Zealand's tax system. Recently, while Hipkins publicly stated that all taxes were back on the table, his actions betray these words. The demotion of David Parker, an advocate for a capital gains tax, to number 19 in caucus rankings, was a clear signal to progressive factions within Labour. Parker's removal from finance-related portfolios reflects an unwillingness to push for wealth redistribution, further fueling distrust within the party. This pattern of decision-making points to a leadership style that prioritises business interests and immediate optics over equitable long-term solutions. Hipkins' background in the oil and gas industry and his political choices suggest a worldview shaped by those priorities.